on the Maritime podcast here as we talk about the Quebec Maritime Junior Hockey League. Mavs Gillis, Jeremy Boucher. We're into the semis. Jeremy, your team's still playing as well. So you have to be very, very excited.
Yeah, wouldn't be. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't excited. It's been a while since we've seen a team like this in Moncton. You can make the argument that 2020 they had a nice roster put together, but of course it got shut down because of the pandemic. So I really think you got to go back to 2010. Their President Cup year that to look at a team like this in Moncton. And it's been a fun run. The crowds are into it. They've really bought into the playoff vibe, and there's it's just a different beast inside the Avenir Center lately. It's some of the best atmospheres I've seen. Since that place opened up. What is it now? Seven years.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring up since 2020 because I do remember that season, the Wildcats, they were a team that were all in. The Eagles were a team that were all in, and I believe Rimouski
Yep.
were also all in on that spot. And then everything came collapsing down, and there were so many trades that were made that leveraged futures for a run that year. And
Mhm.
it felt like it's good to see that those teams are now back. And again, it's just a testament to the cycle of junior hockey. You take your dip and then you're back into it. The cycle of junior hockey, last time we chatted, we were talking about the Mooseheads being down to the Rouyn-Noranda Huskies. We'll talk about that Wildcats Husky series in a second, but I do want to start off. I want to talk about the Halifax Mooseheads for a second because this is a team that a lot of people didn't even have them winning a game, maybe one in the playoffs. For them to pull off that series upset over Drummondville, and a lot of that has to do with Jacob Steinman, has jump started the cycle for the Halifax Mooseheads. And I believe it was in this series against the Huskies. I know it was a 4-0 sweep. We saw so much emotion on Eastlink Community TV when we covered it, when we saw Brady Schultz and then Braden McPhee as well, Jacob Steinman there, the 320s, as their career came to an end. But so many young kids on that Halifax Moosehead team, a team that was so beaten up as well.
Mhm.
That's the other thing. Like they were the walking wounded. There was game three of that series. I came out of the rink and was trying to explain to Troy exactly what the body bag game was against with the Philadelphia Eagles years ago because it just felt like everyone was going down for the Halifax Mooseheads. That is a young team that got to take a look at what the measuring stick and what the level has to be a team that gets to the Final Four, if not beyond, in the queue against the Rouen Rand Huskies. That was a learning experience for them. Um, a great way for that team to go. I know you don't want to lose, but they jump started their development by quite a shot. And now they're also in that draft lottery. They're picking third. But I just wanted to get that in there for that Halifax team because they were an inspirational crew. We'll say that. We'll say that. But now again, the Huskies sweep them. They're against your Wildcats. Rudy Guimont, 22-0, and Mathis Rousseau, first star in game one.
Yeah, it's definitely been it's been a defensive battle. Those first two games have been unbelievable. Not a lot of time and space out there. As soon as you get possession of the puck, you're getting you got a forechecker in your face or they're right beside you. There is not a lot of room on the ice, and you look at the small rink in Rouen, it's going to be even tougher. Yeah, Mathis Rousseau, Rudy Guimard, what can you say? It's gotten to the point where, they're still flip flopping, goalies every game. I can't think of a time Mavs where that was done in the playoffs before. It happens in U18 level, where it's a different goalie in the net every night just to get them the games played. I can't think of a time where we've seen a team this far into the playoffs in the final four that have gone back and forth with their goalies. It's something else. It's a 1A 1B situation in Moncton right now, and uh, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Well, again, and I don't think, you'll, at the end of the day, Gardner has the call on that, of course, but I don't think he has a choice. You have Mathis Rousseau, who is a playoff performer through and through. You have Rudy Guimont, who has not lost a game in his Q career. You're not making a wrong choice with either one of those guys starting. So why not go game for game with them? I know it's unconventional, but there's a lot of things that are unconventional with Gardner McDougall, and guess what? It works. It works so well for him. So again, we're recording this tonight as Game 3 in both series is taking place. But I going back and forth and sharing the net between these two, the team in front of them know what they have. They've got a solid goaltender either way. There's no drop off with either one of them.
Yeah, both the teams, all the players have told me that it doesn't matter who's in the net. They trust him 110%, and you're seeing that, with the fans, the fan base as well. You've got those who are on Team Rudy. You've got some that are on Team Russo. Uh, but it's the whatever Gardner's doing is working. And you talk about, in playoffs, the adjustments that you have to make in game, to win these tight battles. And you look at game two in the third period. The Wildcats are going into that third period down 1-0, and what's he do? He breaks up the top line. He breaks up Dinwiddie and Sumpin Pekarchik. He breaks up Maxime Cote, Marcus Vidicek, and Alex Mercier. He promotes Preston Lounsbury. Well, guess who goes and scores a game-winning goal for the Wildcats? Preston Lounsbury, right? So he's making these adjustments on the fly. He's not making them too early in order for the Huskies to counter, and that just shows this his coach IQ that he has behind the bench to know when to make a move and who to put in the slot, and it's definitely paying off. It's been two very close games. These next two games, they could go either way. And then you look at 2016, and it was Moncton against Rouen, and same thing. Rouen took that one 4-2. This is kind of Moncton's. They're looking at revenge here, and I know for the folks here in Moncton, they want to be in the finals. There's an opportunity here to do something that we haven't seen in Moncton before. Uh, when we had some long playoff runs at the Coliseum, and of course, the attendance at the Coliseum, absolute max capacity was 7,200, right? So a playoff game, franchise record for attendance in Wildcats history right now is 7,200. We can get 8,800 in the Avenir Center. So you make it to the finals, I think we're looking at a new franchise record for attendance.
We were talking before the year. I'm surprised that there hasn't been sellouts at the Avenir Center already in this series with the team that you have on the ice. And I know you say Thursday night, school night, and Friday again, you're getting your hardcores, but you're in the league semis, and this is a team that is number one in Canada. I'm actually kind of surprised that there hasn't been that level of sellout yet. But again, there's all kinds of attributing factors to that. And you were the first one to say, the numbers. It wasn't a sellout, but it sure as heck sounded like one.
Yeah, and 4,500 on the Thursday night sounded like 6,000 people. It's a different fan base in the playoffs. The hardcores come out to these games, and regardless of how much the ticket prices are, and I think if we see a game 5 in Moncton on Friday night, I think you're going to see 7,000 people in that rink. There's no school here in New Brunswick I'm not sure about all of New Brunswick, but here in Moncton, there's no school on Friday, right? So the kids are going to have all day to relax, and I'll get them hyped up on that cotton candy and bring them to the rink on Friday night for a good time. But let's not take away from the crowd in Rouen either. It's you're probably looking at 3,600 people Tuesday night and Wednesday night. It's I thought it was going to be a loud rink, but we've seen the league kind of start to crack down on air horns, right? But Rouen encouraging their fans to bring their trumpets, to bring their makeshift homemade noisemakers. So 3,600 people in Rouen is going to sound like 8,000, and Moncton was able to kind of weather the storm in Baie-Comeau, with their air horns, where it's again 3,000 people sounded like 20,000. Just an insane atmosphere. But Moncton's got to be able to counter that that fan base, because they're going to be loud and they're going to be wild.
I'm curious if that ban on air horns is going to continue on into the future. I know we've talked about the direct car and their air horns, and yeah, there comes a certain charm with it, but there's also there might be something that needs to be left in the past. The drill horns and the industrial strength truck horns in arenas. I just again, hey, that's all fine and good, but no, it's. I think it's time to move past that. I think it's time to evolve that, especially in Baie-Comeau.
Yeah, I mean, look, you can make a noisemaker by throwing a couple coins in a pop bottle and bring it into the rink, right? Like that's going to make some noise. And ironically, it's you could make the argument that they finally decided to crack down on this after Moncton was in Baie-Comeau, whose Moncton's rink is ironically named after a hearing company. It's it's just one of those things where it's like it's so funny that the decision was made after the Moncton Wildcats, who played the Avenir Hearing,
You know
played
what's
in Bay.
what's funny is that I remember a decade, 2 decades ago, someone telling me, the next generations of optometrists are going to be ear doctors because of everyone walking around with their earbuds and stuff like that. And hey, they ain't wrong. They are not wrong, my friend. Um, let's talk about crowds as well. Rimouski doing a whiteout. They're getting ready for the Memorial Cup, and we talked about the goaltending of Moncton. Uh, Mathis Langevin has been lights out in the second round. He's only allowed one goal, and he is the backbone of that team that is already quite stacked as well. Very glad to see Louis Levesque scoring in the playoffs as well, and seeing some offensive production from him with the Oceanic.
Yeah, Mathis Langevin has really stepped up the game. When I think when Charlottetown saw that they wouldn't be facing William LaSalle in the first round, I think they got a little maybe a little confident. And I'll use this opportunity to let everybody know that we'll have Jim Hulton joining us here and shortly on the show, and I'm sure we'll talk about that series. But he's been unreal. It's anytime you look at you go into a matchup thinking you're playing a backup goalie, you might have an advantage, but he's been extremely good. Not don't know what's going on with LaSalle, if they're just maybe giving him a bit of a rest. But you got to look at that other Rimouski lineup. I mean, they're a hurting unit right now. If you've looked at their scratches, you would think that they wouldn't be winning these games, and even if they were winning, they wouldn't be scoring 7 goals. But believe it or not, they're winning games and still scoring 7 goals. When they're without Eric Smetanko and Matthew Cataford and Spencer Gill, like that shows you how deep the Oceanic are. And I get to be up 2 games to nothing against Shawinigan with your what could be a starting lineup in an All-Star game as scratches is unbelievable. They've done an amazing job with what they've done to put that team together to get them where they are right now.
Also, their power play hitting at 31% in the playoffs. Their penalty kill at 90%. Their special teams has been lights out, and again, special teams and capitalizing on those opportunities. To 13 power play goals here in the postseason. They've got more power play goals than games in that stat. So it's again, hats off to the Oceanic. I know when we have Jim Hulton on, we're going to be asking him how you attack both teams, because he's had a chance he's coached against Moncton 8 times and coaching as Rimouski in the playoffs as well in the regular season. So I'm looking forward to that conversation. Always looking forward to chatting with Jim Hulton. And we're chatting a little draft lottery as we get
Yeah.
things started. And the ping pong ball went in the little cycle and they came out, and we've got our 1 through 5 ready to go.
Yeah, so St. John Sea Dogs will pick first overall. No surprise. If it's a draft lottery, there's three things in life that are absolutely certain: death, taxes, and the Sea Dogs win the draft lottery. And I think that can only be attested to, if we have Trevor Georgie on the show, we're just good luck. And we brought him the good luck to get that number one pick to the Sea Dogs again. And
Talk about good luck for the Sea Dogs. CM Punk wearing a Sea Dogs hat on WrestleMania.
right.
That blew my mind. Okay, again, I sent a message to a couple of my friends up there, like, where did Punk get a St. John Sea Dogs hat? And wearing it on ESPN and WrestleMania was, anyways. I attribute it to the fact that me and Trevor Georgie talked about Masato Tanaka versus Mike Awesome from One Night Stand in 2005 on the podcast. I'm sure he's a big fan, Mr. Punk, of the old podcast. But anyways, back to the draft lottery. My apologies.
Yeah, and if you're going to bring up wrestling, I've got to bring up wrestling as well. How about their manager of communications, Brian McPherson, correctly predicting that Randy Orton's opponent would be Joe Hendry? All right, like that was pretty good.
That's
So
a great call. That's a great call.
the Dogs really hit it out of the park here at WrestleMania and also at the draft lottery. So they've they've got their choice. There's two guys that are really kind of separating themselves from the rest of the pack when it comes to the draft. And, St. John's going to be able to take whoever they want at this point. It's unbelievable. So, yeah, St. John at 1, Victoriaville at 2, Halifax at 3, Quebec Ramparts at 4, and the Newfoundland Regiment will be picking 5th overall, 6th overall, and 8th overall.
So they'll be loading up in Newfoundland, and I know any kid that gets their name called to go play for the regiment, that is going to be an exciting first season of hockey with the Newfoundland regiment. And we have the first round on Eastlink Community TV as well. We're getting ourselves set for that draft coverage June 6th from the beautiful Videotron Center, live via DeGiro from the Sackville Sports Studio. And can't wait for that. We're going to be showing you all the emotion of all the kids getting picked in the first round. It's always a fun night when we get to do the first round of the Quebec Maritime Junior Hockey League draft. And last year doing it in person, as I said, the second day was like reading the crop report on WKRP. The Les Nessman reference for you there. I cannot wait though for that. And again, we're going to be talking about prospects coming up probably in the episode post the finals, and we'll get into some of the particulars there. And again, drafts always quite a fun time. Quite a fun time. We'll be doing it. We won't be at the Videotron Center, but we'll make sure that you feel like you're. We're going to make sure that we bring it to you here on Eastlink Community TV for sure. Speaking of Eastlink Community TV, one of our favorites, Jim Hulton, is going to join us on the other side of the break. It's hard to believe it's been 10 seasons since Jim Hulton threw on a Charlottetown Islanders hat, July 2nd, 2015. And now that journey has taken him to the finals, and he's also won CHL Coach of the Year as the coach general manager of the Islanders. And we get to chat with him coming up after this. Well, if you've listened to Around the Maritime podcast or watched us on the site, you know what time it is. It's Eastlink time. Eastlink time. Eastlink time. You all know it's Eastlink time. There ain't no reason and there ain't no rhyme. It's Eastlink time. Dun, 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 dun. Now, if you could tell me which Wayne and Schuster skit I was paraphrasing there, please, I would love to hear that. It is an old Wayne and Schuster bit. And Wayne and Schuster, they were the perfect pair for Canadian comedy. And Eastlink has the perfect pair. It is unlimited mobile and a gig internet for 99 bucks a month. That's right. Unlimited mobile and a gig internet at 99 a month. The perfect pair, just like Wayne and Schuster. I don't know. I, I don't know. I just hope the estate of Wayne and Schuster doesn't come and sue me for this. But I don't think they would. I think they'd appreciate the fact that I referenced them here. They're not anyways. Hey, 1-888-345-1111. Visit eastlink.ca or go to the store and check out the website for more details on the perfect pair. I feel like I gotta do a Wayne and Schuster bit to get out of here. Well, if you look at the clock on the wall, no, I'm not. All right, you know what you're doing. Joining us at this time, around the Maritimes, the head coach, general manager, Charlottetown Islanders, friend of Eastlink Community TV, Jim Hulton. Jim, thanks for taking some time to pop on. Long time coming. Glad to have you on here. What's been the season for you since bowing out first round against Rimouski?
Well, I think especially wearing both hats, you quickly flip the switch into roster building for the future. We just got done this last weekend with the Q Cup in Blainville, which is a great opportunity to see basically the top 80 rated kids for our draft. We had a lot of our staff in. We had some really productive meetings on Saturday, really leading up into the draft, and now we'll spend the next month interviewing a lot of the kids and doing a lot of the necessary homework and background as we build towards the future.
Yeah, so obviously, you could say the season probably didn't go the way you were hoping it to go, but just give us your overall thoughts on how the year was with the Islanders.
Well, it's a complex answer, and I've been asked a lot, and I have difficulty summarizing it in kind of a succinct, short fashion because it felt like we played a number of different seasons, and I think the underlying theme of our season was injuries. We had an unprecedented. I think we had 14 documented concussions, which is more than I probably had in my entire coaching career. It felt like we could never get any continuity with our lineup. And the small stretch that we did, I think we went 14-6 in the months of January and February, which give us a lot of hope and promise heading into March and April, which is the most important time of the season. But for whatever reason, we fumbled badly in the playoffs. I knew we were up against it. Rimouski is an extremely strong team. Uh, I knew we were up against winning the round, but I thought we were going to be able to play Islander hockey and compete. And for whatever reason, we seemed to get overwhelmed in the moment. We didn't. So the ending, we picked a bad week to have a really bad week, and it sours kind of your taste of how the season went. And I think it forces you to have a different evaluation. But we had a great group of kids. They were really connected together, worked hard, a fun group to coach. So from that aspect, it was good. But we're a bottom line business, and the bottom line is we didn't get the job done.
Well, I would actually like to go to that 14-6 stretch because we were over there a couple times, and the team, like, it just looked like it gelled so well. What were the characteristics that you saw out of that stretch of hockey that should have Islanders fans excited for this upcoming season?
Well, a couple of things. I think our goaltending kind of went to a different level. Both Ruchia and Hickey they had some hiccups in the first half of the season, but they both seemed to get comfortable in their play. And we all know how important strong goaltending is. And we made some subtle and not so subtle changes at Christmas. On one hand, we sold off two really good players in Goryanov and Michaud to acquire and kind of restock the shelf of draft picks. But with the unique situation this year with the NCAA rule changing, the BCHL situation. We were able to add guys like Jonathan Lanza and Ethan Montroy. We just seemed to spark some energy in our room, and I give our leadership group and our dressing room credit. They really bonded together. It was a group that loved to be with each other, and you could see that on the ice. And I guess that's probably why we're so disappointed with how it ended. We're not upset, but it's more confounded how it went south so quickly, and there probably isn't any easy answers.
Yeah, believe it or not, I mean, it's going to be your 10th season with the Islanders. When the puck drops, in September, it really is hard to believe. You brought up Islander hockey earlier, but I think the term that around the league is Hulton hockey. So what's the definition of Hulton hockey?
Well, first of all, I don't think it's ever been one person. So, yeah, hey, it's fun to hear that, but it's Islander hockey for me because there's a lot. My staff's been together for a long time. Guy Girard's been with me for 9 of those years. Kevin Henderson 5, and they play equally as important a role with us. But I think our kind of our goal to simplify it down into a real simple message is every night we go into the rink, we want the other team walking away saying, you know what, son of a gun, that was a tough game. That was a really tough team to play against. And that means a lot of different things for different people. But, a Matt Butler who's 5'8", he might be tenacious on puck hunts, whereas a Jabez Seymour is 6'3", he has to be a physical force. He has to be literally hard to play against from a physical standpoint. But we try to build our identity around that, be the hardest team to play against in our league.
Jim, it was you talk about it being 10 years. I go back to the start of your junior career when Donald S. Cherry gave the hometown kid a call to say, "Hey, come on up, and you're now coaching the Mississauga Ice Dogs. You're now an assistant with this team," and that evolved to the head coach. What are your memories from that first phone call from Mr. Cherry that you were going to be on his coaching staff?
Well, I'll date back a little bit. At the time that I got the call, I was coaching the junior B team here in Kingston, Ontario, which was my hometown. And it happened, obviously, I think everybody knows that Don Cherry is from Kingston. He certainly wasn't shy to express the fact of his love of Kingston. So I had a very good junior B team here for the Kingston Voyageurs. I think we were 19-6 at the time when the opening came. My mother, to this day, cringes because I had just got hired on a pharmaceutical company. It's kind of a funny story. Got hired to be a pharmaceutical sales job, which at the time was really, really good jobs. And I'm in Toronto training. I've had the job for literally 2 days. I'll never forget it. It's Grey Cup weekend. And this is how old I am. This is before cell phones. Cell phones were just starting to come out. So I do training all day. I come back to the hotel and the lights flash. Remember the message light on the phones. And it's from my best friend. My best friend's the general manager of the junior B team. And he's like, "You got to get a hold of Dick Cherry. He's trying to get a hold of you. Like, he wants you to interview for the Ice Dog job." And I think he's pulling my leg. I'm like, "Come on. It's Don Cherry. Like, for God's sakes, don't do this to me." But sure enough, I get a hold of Dick, and they're like, "No, Don wants to interview you tomorrow." So I have to go through an entire day of training again with my mind nowhere near pharmaceuticals. And then I have to get in my car, race across the city, and go into Mississauga. And talk about intimidating. I'm 28 years old. We go in, and there's Don dressed up in the Hockey Canada or the Hockey Night in Canada suit. And I've grown up idolizing this guy, and I'm scared out of my wits. We go through a conversation. He calls me a night later and offers me the job, and I'm numb. I'm speechless. I don't know what to say. I'm like, I'm 28 years old. I'd had 25 games of head coaching experience, and here I am getting this opportunity. So it was outlandish, bizarre, and incredibly exciting all at the same time.
What's the best bit of coaching advice you got from Cherry?
Just be who you are. I think Don gets mischaracterized a lot. He's a really passionate guy. He taught me, I think, the one thing I've gained, and maybe I didn't appreciate at the time, is what I use it a lot now, is the art of simplicity. He talked about simple things like, rimming pucks under pressure, and about how the line match, and certain subtle things. And I think that was just it. And incorporate, like, steal little ideas from everybody, but be yourself and be strong in what you believe in.
Yeah, Maz brings up coaching in the OHL. You've been to the USHL, the NHL, CIS. You could really name it. Of course, the Q. Is there something that's really stuck with you, like of all these years, something that's stuck with you that you bring to the rink with you every day?
Well, in a weird way, one of the best experiences I had, which at the time I probably didn't appreciate, is I had coached junior for probably 6 or 7 years, and then I coached CIS. I coached at the Royal Military College in Kingston, Ontario, and this was just when kind of the conflicts in Afghanistan were starting. So I was dealing with kids who literally could have been called into war the next day. So it changed the perspective. And it was also the first time that I had coached, say, adults. These were young adults, 20 to 25 years old. Most of my time had been spent on junior. And it was the first time that I realized the importance of making it a partnership, not a dictatorship. I think I grew up in an era when you played where the coach, was the final authority. And as a young coach, I was probably intimidated and probably was a little bit too over the top. But I think at our RMC, dealing with men and dealing with kids with a different perspective, hockey wasn't the number one priority, which we fully understood. But it caused me to step back a little bit and understand the importance of building relationships. And that springboard into today's game, because I think today's athlete needs that. But that was a big turning point for me. And when I look back on it, I probably didn't appreciate it at the time because I thought it was a step down, quite frankly. I'd left the OHL and had to go back to CIS, and RMC was like a bottom feeder team. But I have wonderful respect for the men that I met there. In fact, I still keep in touch with a lot of them. But I became a much better coach, and I learned a lot about relationship building in that setting.
When you are, you've got such a lineage of coaching and you keep in touch with guys. Are there kids that you've coached that are now in the ranks of coaching?
Yes, there is. There's certain guys at different levels. One of the RMC graduates, a kid by the name of Luke Pierce. I say kid. He's not a kid anymore. I can't forget how old I am. Luke Pierce is now the head coach of the Edmonton Oil Kings, and Luke was one of the guys we keep in touch. He was a heart and soul guy. And there's different guys that are coaching at various different levels. And I'm as proud as the guy that has become a good dad and is coaching his son at Pee Wee as you are a guy that's doing it full time. And I think the fact that we are to help them love the game and guys that are giving back to the game, that's as rewarding as anything else in our job.
No, you're muted there, Jeremy. There we
Sorry
go.
about that. There we go. Not sure how that happened, but hey, that's technology. This is
Hey, I've
obviously
had lots of refs that want to mute me, Jeremy, so I get it completely.
This is obviously a busy time of the year. For GMs in the league, you've got the under 18s, the Telus Cup, the Q Cup. How do you balance those three events?
Well, I think you have to be able to delegate. I think the one thing in particular for those of us that have dual roles, whether it be in our league or any of the three junior leagues, you have to be able to delegate and you have to believe in the people around you. And I've got a terrific scouting staff who we believe firmly in. We've been together a long time. I trust their opinions. And for us, we're a smaller market team, so we don't have the budget to be in person on the ground in Dallas at the under 18 or at the Telus Cup. But with technology now, and I think we challenge ourselves to watch a lot of tape and to do a lot of investigation in different forms, whether it be interviewing coaches, whether it be talking to different people. So it's a collaborative effort from our group, and we've had a lot of success, I think, with the think tank approach.
We've always talked about how you're so good at finding the Ontario free agents, especially in midseason. We've seen it time and time again. But with now, what is the approach going into this off season, knowing that the 18, 19s that would have wanted to stay their NCAA eligibility, keep that intact, they're now in play and now potentially out of their USHL cards, their BCHL cards. What's and it is ever evolving. Where do you see like that landscape, and especially going into this off season with those players?
Well, it's a great question, Mez, because literally since the rule dropped in mid-November, the inbox, the voice message has just been exploded. Like every day, we're getting calls from prospective players and agents that because again, no more eligibility concerns. So a lot more homework needs to be done, and we always step back. We challenge ourselves as our job as the management. And we have a management team here with myself, Guy Girard, and Trevor Bird. Is what can we do to put the best 20, 25 players on the ice? We don't care where they come from. We don't care what their ages are. So this is uncharted water for us. We've dove in a little bit to the U.S. We had great success with Jude Heron as kind of our guinea pig starting. We've signed a couple of kids. We're pursuing some other ones in the free agents, but we have a great guy here in Ontario by the name of Rob Ridgely, who has done a wonderful job unearthing some of those gems. But it's the same thing. I can literally go to him with a wish list of like, okay, Rob, here, we think we need a fourth liner with this description. We need a defenseman with this description. Can you find anybody that fits that? So really, it hasn't changed that much. What it's done is open up a lot of other possibilities with not only Ontario, but now obviously our U.S. territory.
Yeah, and speaking of the U.S. territory, there was the U.S. Showcase or Challenge. I'm not exactly sure what it was called a couple of weeks ago. Jude Heron, was a guest speaker there. I believe you were down there as well, Jim. What was that like? And do you realistically see the number of American players being drafted much higher this year compared to others?
Well, another great question. I thought the showcase was great because I think we have to start. We didn't necessarily get all of the top rated kids, but I think it's important that we start and get a footprint down there. And all of our teams were represented. I think it's a lot of education going on both sides of the fence here. A lot of kids down there, and more in particular to the parents, don't understand how our system works. So it was important to get in front of them to explain that. And then obviously for us to be able to sell our programs individually to these players. I'm like you. I'm really curious to see how much impact the Americans have on this year's draft. We all watched the most recent OHL draft. I think they doubled the number of, I think it went from 40 to 80 or something like that, of Americans drafted. And I'm curious. There's definitely, I think you'll see pockets of teams that dive in a little bit heavier than others. For us, we've just challenged ourselves. So there again, who are the best players? Now it's a challenge to rank them because the rule change happened basically mid-season. So it's difficult to assess some of the Americans. I think it'd be a year or two until we get a full realization of how it's going to work.
To go back to the Ice Dogs and the Frontenacs, I'd love to talk about your initial impressions of coaching Jason Spezza. Again, you're 2 years, 3 years removed from coaching Junior B, and all of a sudden you have this kid in front of you as a potential top NHL draft pick. What was that like for you as a young coach?
Well, to be honest with you, at the first it was intimidating because his agent was Bobby Orr, who, again, I'd grown up idolizing. So you're in conversations with Bobby Orr, who's now an agent. So I'm 28 years old. You have to put this in perspective. I've just got hired by Don Cherry, and who's best friends with Bobby Orr. And I'm like, I'm pinching myself because I'm still the 7 year old little boy that's idolizing these two guys, but I'm not, I can't go fanboy. So we have to get businesslike and talk a bit. So Jason played, they didn't have exceptional status player back then, but you could play for your hometown in your underage season. So he played an entire season with Brampton Battalion, who came in at the same time as the Ice Dogs as the two expansion teams, yet was still eligible for the next draft. I think he had 50 points at 14 or 15 and was eligible for the draft. So we knew from Christmas on that we were probably drafting him. It's the first time for me that I was around the hype and the exposure that goes with a high end player. So there's a ton of outside noise. My biggest impression of Jason is just how much this guy just loved the game. He was so passionate about the game. He was young. He had that nervous goofiness about him, the smile and the laughs that we've all gotten to know. But the bottom line and the thing that sticks out to me is just how much he loved hockey, and he was really damn good at it.
On the topic of Spezza, does it surprise you that he went on to have like what was it, a 19-year NHL career? Like, did you? I know it was hard to probably look into a crystal ball back then, but did you see him as a young guy like that having such an extended career in the big leagues?
Yeah, at the risk of sounding foolish, you did because this guy he was top level talent. I mean, it was a special level of talent. He had the size and he had the passion for it. Like he literally loved the game. I remember the first impression was he had the stick that was back then. Guys used to have small sticks. He had a stick above his head, but his hands were magical. Like his vision and his passing ability. So I actually had him twice in Ontario. We had him the start in Mississauga, and then when I moved on to the Belleville Bulls, we had a big trade. We actually traded Kyle Wellwood to the Windsor Spitfires in exchange for Jason Spezza, two huge names. But Spezza came in and he broke our team record for consecutive games. Like his first, I think, 15 games with Belleville, he had points in every game. And so it was a unique perspective where I had him at 16 and got him again at 19. And to see the progression at 19, you were like, okay, this guy's going to have if he stays healthy, he's going to have a long career. And he certainly did.
So he's the first top end high prospect that you have under you as a coach. Then you're on a run with that crop of world junior talent that some will say is probably the best ever. When you look back on that Hockey Canada experience from coaching the U18s right on up to that world junior experience in 05, what are your memories and what do you take away from that experience and what was that like for you at the time?
Well, the experiences and the memories are incredible. You see the track record. You had a bit of an idea, within Hockey Canada, there was this excitement and this hype around that age group of what they could be. And I remember sitting there at the World Juniors in 05, and they're saying, if you picture down the road, this is going to be the Olympic team. And it's easy to sit there in a hotel room over a beer or two talking about what could be, but to see what actually did come to fruition with that group of players is absolutely incredible. But they had a drive and a passion. So it was. I had a 4 year run. I did two Halinkas, two World Juniors, and some of the memories of the Halinka, we beat the Russians in the semis with Ovechkin and Malkin. But we had like guys like a guy like Mike Richards, who I absolutely adored as a hockey player because he took on the challenge. Him and Dion Phaneuf wanted to go head to head against the Ovechkins of the world every time. So you knew he had something special. But then we go in 2004 with a really young World Junior group, and we have a Cinderella ride. We hit no ripples at all. We're leading 3-1 into the gold medal against the U.S., and then it all falls apart and we lose. It's the infamous Marc-Andre Fleury shoots the puck off Braden Colburn's butt, goes in the back of our net. But we were such a young team, and we literally had no adversity that we couldn't get out of it. But that springboarded us and fueled us. There was, I think, 13 of us, 12 players and myself, that got the golden opportunity to go back the following year. And it was on an incredible mission. All the stars aligned. It was an NHL lock-in. We got Bergeron back, Crosby back. I mean, you name it. It was the best of the best. Brent Sutter came in, who was the absolute perfect choice at the time. And it was just on a mission. The year before was kind of a novelty. We were all young. None of us had experienced the World Juniors before. But quite frankly, we were all so turned off by our experiences in that third period that it fueled a mission the next year. That it was, I don't want to say it was never dead, because that sounds kind of arrogant to the other teams. But honestly, with the group of players we had, it was going to take a miracle for us to lose. They were just so bloody focused. It was such an easy group to coach. And that's what I'll remember. And then just sitting back as a pure hockey fan and getting to know them. They were classy, quality individuals, and to see what they've gone on to do. The amount of Stanley Cups and future Hall of Fames is absolutely amazing. So I always consider myself, I'm kind of like Forrest Gump. You remember Forrest used to show up in all these different places that he didn't belong. That's what I feel like when I see this group. I'm like, the hell was I part of that group for? I don't belong there. But special memories.
All the Stanley Cups, all the Hall of Famers, and Paul Bissonnette as well in that group as well. What's your memories with
Absolutely.
Paul, with Biz Nasty, now that he's overtaken hockey media?
Well, you know what? It was just what a great sense of humor. Number one, I didn't think he was going to go. I don't think anybody envisioned he was going to go on to what he's doing now. But there's two things for Biz: is he's absolutely one of the best glue guys you've ever met. He is as honest, and everything you see is what he is. He's just upfront. He's honest. He's a total team player. But he never forgets. I'm at the NHL draft in Nashville a couple of years ago, and I have not seen Biz in 15 years at this point. Comes right over, says hello, remembers your name, jumps right down, sits down, and it's like, wow, like this guy is obviously now the belle of the ball for the media. Really probably the biggest name in the NHL media right now, but he doesn't forget where he came from. And that's what I always remember of him.
Yeah, that World Junior team. I mean, it's you look at the roster, and you almost did you ever just get behind the bench and just think, do I even need to coach because it's just a team full of superstars?
Well, trust me, and lots of people have mentioned that that anybody could coach the team. But I think what happened is when we went this summer, the reason I say that Brent Sutter was the perfect choice for the job is because Brent has a certain cachet about him when he walks into a room. Obviously, at that time, players were still smart enough to know that he'd played a long time. He'd won Stanley Cups. He'd won Memorial Cup. And what I learned from working with him and Pete DeBoer that year is there was no gray area. It was black or it was white. Here's our rules. Boom, go. Now, the great part with that group is there was total buy-in. But no matter how big the group is, you still have to have a leader. And Brent was the perfect leader. Hey, we all knew that we had a special group. But they all bought in, and I think no matter what the group is, you have to have buy-in. And credit to those kids that they did. They had one thing in mind, one thing only, and that was a gold medal.
It gets you a chance in a couple of years to go up to the Florida Panthers as an assistant coach. What is that grind like, being an assistant in the National?
Well, it's certainly let's be honest, there's a novelty because whether we're in the media, whether we're coaches, whether we're players, whether we're fans, your goal is to get to the NHL. So when you get there, there's a little bit of an off factor. I remember my first exhibition game in Carolina, and Pete had committed junior as well. So it's really our first pro experience. And I'll never forget walking off the ice in the first period. And he said, "What do you think?" And I said, "I don't have a damn clue," because it was so fast. I couldn't tell you a thing about the system. It was so much faster at ice level than anything I had experienced that I was just literally in awe for the first little bit. You quickly get into the grind. It's, you open your laptop, you're on an airplane in another city, and it's go, go, go. So you have to learn to condition yourself. And the whole time you're trying to step back and say, hold on, I need to enjoy this. This is the top of the ladder at the NHL, but it's work. It's a high pressure environment. It's a much different animal than it is junior with so-called outside noise and then the internal pressures. And then one thing early on, Pete mentioned that the biggest difference was you can't afford a slow start at pro. In junior, you could. We've all seen the teams that at Christmas revamped their lineup. We did a little bit of that this year with our own team. You can't do that. Like the pressure right out of the gate is immense. And that was the biggest difference for me. It was just the pressure that was on everybody, way more on the head coach than the assistants, but it was a grind. And then I think from a coaching perspective, it was refreshing in the fact that you still have to teach. There could be guys that have been in the NHL for 10 years, but you still have to teach, and they're still receptive to teaching. They're just a bigger version of kids.
I do want to point out that your first year in Sunrise, the Dolphins went from 1-15 to 11-5, and they won the division. And it's the last time they won the division. So, Jim, and it was the year they installed the Wildcat. Yeah, I'll give you credit for the Wildcat that you went to see Tony Sperano and help draw that up. If another job comes up in Sunrise, I know Paul Maurice is probably solidified there, but if you're the bump that helps the Dolphins win the division, please, man. I know I'd miss you, Charlottetown, but it would help my Dolphins immensely.
Well, let's get her done.
Awesome. Awesome.
Not to take anything away from Charlottetown, because obviously great environment in Charlottetown. But looking ahead to the draft, we got coming up in I think June 6th or June 7th. Islanders picking 7th overall. Like, do you see yourself as your group with an organizational need with that pick, or more leading towards the best player available approach?
Yeah, our philosophy has always been if you're within the top 10 as best player. I think that served us well. The last time we've picked it's kind of a running joke within our staff, and I'm sure you guys are aware, we haven't had a plethora of first round draft picks since I've been at the GM chair. We've tended to move a lot of them. So the last time we picked in the top 10, worked out pretty well with Lucas Cormier. But we took the same approach there. I mean, the two names that we had that year were Lucas Cormier and Patrick Gay, who ended up playing for us years later. But had Lucas been gone, it would have been Patrick. So it wasn't necessarily positional based. It was best player, and that's the take that the approach that we're taking this year.
Yeah, excited to see you on the draft coverage. If we were to talk about your coaching philosophy and coaching role models, who would be guys or girls that come to mind for people that you want to emulate as a coach, and what do you want to take from them?
Well, I think as you build your coaching philosophy and you learn from it, I think you learn to, I use the term steal from everybody, but that kind of sounds, but I've heard other people refer to it as like building your own recipe, but you take a little bit from everybody. But I think that's what happens with experience is you're in these different situations. So I've mentioned people like Brent Sutter, Pete DeBoer. I had a wonderful coach in university. Probably the biggest influence at the start of my career was a guy by the name of Graham Wise, who was my coach at York University in Toronto. And Graham was ahead of the time, and he was the first guy that had systems. Like I played in the mid '80s junior hockey, where we basically did the same practice every day, and great guys that coached us, but there wasn't a lot of coaching to the brain. It was more coaching to the heart. It was more motivating. It was a different era. But I went to university, and all of a sudden we had a theme every day. One day we would work forecheck, we would, tracking all these different things. We started to get into video. So that was the first time that I looked at the game through a different set of eyes in terms of it used to be just more the mid '80s raw, whatever team was most motivated won the game. There wasn't a lot of system play. So that was my first introduction into system play. And then I think when I got coaching, obviously learning and listening from Don and Dick Cherry, if you cut through the rhetoric that everybody listens to, they forget that these are really smart hockey guys, right? They just hear the kind of the bluster, but they don't understand that there's a lot of credence to their experience. And a lot of theirs was how they handled individual players, which is a big part of coaching today. So then again, I talked earlier about Brent and Pete. Both to me, the clarity of their message was the big thing that I learned from those guys. Is whether the message is good or the message is bad, don't sugarcoat it. Get right to it, get over with it, move on to the next message. And I think players appreciate that. The feedback I've got from players, whether it was good, bad, or there was no indifferent, the expression is good, bad, or indifferent, they would rather have just good or bad. They want to know where you stand. They don't like mind games. They don't like, coach says one thing, does another thing. So I think you learn over the course of time just to be upfront and honest and create partnerships.
One player that you drafted was Sam Oliver back in 2020. When you picked him, did you see him going on to have a career like he did, being a 50 goal scorer in the league?
I'm not sure we envisioned 50 goals. I know our guys were really excited. We actually traded down that draft. We didn't have a first, again, no surprise to our staff, but we strategically traded down with fingers crossed that Sam would drop a little bit. So I know our staff was extremely high on him. I can't take any credit for any of our picks because, quite frankly, I don't do a lot of hands-on scouting during the season with both roles. But our scouts were really, really high on Sam, and they thought with his shot, and he's another guy who loves the game. Sam's a real student of the game, and he has a real passion. And when you get kids that really love the game, it's hard to put a ceiling on them. He had a great heavy shot. I'm not sure any of us predicted 50 goals, but I remember the draft table, they thought for sure he'd be a 30, 40 goal scorer at 19, 20 years old. So it's certainly been gratifying, even though the price you pay to go for it is sacrificing young talent. You still get to know these kids, and it was really, really neat to see that Sam ends up as a champion in our league and a 50 goal scorer. And now with the new rules, gets a chance to move on and continue at a high level at NCAA.
Um, I'll ask you, if you were to name your all-time starting lineup for the Islanders over your decade here, what are the six you're going with?
Well, man, you know me well enough that I'm probably going to spew some politically correct BS answer that I can't do that. It gets really hard.
Yeah.
It
Oh,
does. And we've had these conversations over the past. For me, there's certain. We use the expression "who's on your Mount Rushmore." You hear that a lot.
mm,
To me, as good as the goaltending we've had, without Matt Welsh, we don't get to the level that our organization is at. I think there was three or four key individuals that kind of took, and it started before I got here. I can't take credit for that. This was Grant Saunier, who set the foundation, and Gordie Dwyer. Quite frankly, deserve a lot of credit. They suffered through and finally got a breakthrough the year before I got here and winning a round. But Welsh and Net, Keith Getson, P.O. Joseph are three names that jump out immediately, who have kind of Getson and Matty really started it. 5-year guys that kind of took us from, I don't want to say the outhouse to the penthouse, but pretty damn close. P.O. took us to a different level. Pascal Akin is a guy who I think we all remember brought in a certain energy to us. Brett Budgell, another 4.5-year player. So now I'm not that I'm grasping, but now it gets hard because there's so many guys. Like I'm talking about our goaltending. I haven't even mentioned Colton Ellis, but Colton was only here 1 year. If you look at the impact guys, the guys that have played those 4 or 5 years, are real difference makers. Yet, people like Simino come in and made a major impact on our culture. He really did. William Trudeau. I guess it's a good thing that I struggled to it, and I'm always hesitant to mention guys because you're gonna leave
mm,
people out who have played really prominent roles, and we've been really lucky, especially through that little run there where people handed. And I've talked about all these people, and I haven't mentioned easily the most talented guy that's ever came through these doors is Daniel Sprong. Like Spronger is just his God-given ability is incredible, and he was also part of a group that took it from maybe being in the playoffs, maybe winning a round, to a group that believed that they could win. So a lot of guys contributed in a lot of different ways. Sorry, I didn't answer that question
don't
at
you know
all. Did
what
I?
you?
I just
But
I danced.
Jim, you're on the money though, because that the foundation that you had, and I remember it where it was a second round matchup, and I think it was against I think it was against Halifax. You're down 1 in the third. You call a timeout. We got our skate cam over there. You say, guys, we're gonna score here. They go. They execute. They do it, and yeah, there was so many great runs over that spot where we just watched the Islanders kind of the rocket ship go off, that there was so many great players that you had there, and even guys that you had for a year, like again, a guy Cedric Desrousseaux, a guy that scored a lot of big goals for you there. There, you had a plethora of riches to take from for that answer. There's no wrong answer
Yeah,
to
we
it.
did. I mean, and maybe one of the biggest goals in Islander history is scored by Cam Askew off an
Mhm.
assist from Hunter Drew. Overtime Game 6 versus Blainville in the Cinderella year. Two guys we haven't even mentioned, but
Yeah.
exactly. Like, there's just so many contributions, and I guess that's what fuels a lot of these runs, and that's what makes great teams. And that's why I love my job, is because putting a team together is like putting a puzzle together. There's all these different pieces, different sizes, different shapes, but without each of them, the puzzle doesn't work. And that's what I believe in a team. So it's hard for. I love when I hear fans name their top six, it's really hard for coaches because you have an appreciation for a lot of different, size, style, contributions, and there's unsung heroes in every team that don't get mentioned in these types of categories. But without them, you don't get to the level that you reached.
Yeah, you might know, Jim, I'm kind of a big draft guy, so I'm sorry if all my questions are about drafts. But the change that we're going to likely see here in the next coming weeks, in the coming weeks, is the ability to draft 3 Europeans in
Yeah.
the import draft. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, and the Islanders' approach. I know you've got Boyega, who had a solid season, and and I know there's a good one in the USHL. You're hoping to lure to the island as well. So what's your, what's the Islanders' approach going into kind of a different import draft this year?
Yeah, well, I think first off, we're all excited about, and I know there's two sides to this debate in terms of adding another import on. I think adding another import on is also an eye to the future from all three CHL leagues that are hoping to expand with the new hockey landscape, whatever you want to call it, that we're entering into. I think you're going to see expansion. I think our league would like to get to 20. We'd like to get some teams in the United States. I know Ontario is. We've already seen expansion in the West with Penticton joining and Chilliwack next year. So in order to fill that, you need more players. And I think the one thing that's been lacking in our league recently has been our depth. If you look at the pure geography, our territory is much, much smaller than the other two leagues, not just our existing Canadian territory, but also our US territory as well. So the ability to add another high end player from Europe is enticing to all of us. So I think that's why the rule is or will pass. And for us, I mean, it's all, again, it goes back to getting the best players. And we have Radovojevic, who's on our frozen list now, so we're still going to be able to draft two, for example, if it goes through, because we'll keep Voyega. We're intrigued by Nikita, what he can be. Obviously, if Radovojevic ever decides to come, and the conversations are ongoing, we'll hope for it. But it gives us a chance to pinpoint. In the past, what we've seen is the really good teams, you can plug a hole in your top six or your top four instantly. It's hard to do that through the draft. I don't think that's fair to the young players on the entry level, but with the import draft, if you get lucky enough, and it's a bit of a crapshoot, let's be honest, we've all seen the hits and the misses, but it's exciting in the fact that you can add kind of plug and play is the term that we use, guys that can jump right in and start.
This is a big weekend for you. You're being inducted into the Kingston and District Sport Hall of Fame. Um, we talked about a lot about Mr. Cherry. And we've talked about a lot of hockey history in Kingston. What does it mean to you to be going into your hometown Sports Hall of Fame?
Well, it's incredibly humbling. It's something that caught me right off guard. As you know me, I'm not often speechless, but this one does because it means a lot. There's a lot of names in that hall that have meant a lot to me personally and professionally. And when you grow up in the community, a lot of your heroes when you're starting out are local people, and there's a lot of them. And so it doesn't feel real yet. It doesn't feel that you're worthy of the honor yet. It's something, and I've had a lot of people say, it's something you'll appreciate later in life. I certainly appreciate it. I'm incredibly humbled by it, filled with a ton of gratitude, and look forward to sharing a lot of stories and having the opportunity to publicly thank a lot of people that have helped out along the journey.
Once you get through your draft season, what does your summer look like? I think we all know that PEI is like a playground, in June, July, and August. So how do you spend your spare time, if any?
Well, I'm a guy that loves the routine. I actually hate the off season in the fact that I really miss the daily routine. I'm probably a coach at heart in terms of when people ask me what part of the job, the dual role do you like best? To me, it's always the coaching because I really love the teaching aspect and diving into video and doing all that stuff that might seem mundane to some people, but I really like it. So I struggle. This first month off is really hard for me all the time to kind of find a routine. I have taken up golf. I'm not very good. But my wife and I have enjoyed playing some best ball. We'll go out on Fridays, play 9 holes. And so I've learned to kind of, as I get older, relax a little bit and try to take some downtime in the summer. I'm also one of the foolish people that decides to live in PI during the winter and then leave when it gets nice. But I am from Ontario, both my wife and I. So our kids are old enough now that they're both driving. We spend upwards to a month back in Ontario visiting family and friends, which is a great way to recharge as well. For me, like some people, you hear all the time, do you need to recharge For me, honestly, I wish I could start the season tomorrow. I love what I do. I'm very, very lucky that way. I like the people I work with. I love my job, and I really miss it. One of the saddest days for me is to come in and see a rink with no ice in it.
I guess if we could talk about you start the season tomorrow for you, if you were coaching against either Moncton or Rimouski right now, you take a look at this finals that's potentially going to happen. I don't want to put the jinx on it because there's still a lot of hockey to be played, but you have more experience coaching against Moncton or Rimouski. What are the characteristics that you take a look at that team if that's the matchup in the finals?
Well, depth. The thing that jumps off the chart at me is depth. They're the only two teams in the league that go three lines deep with, 19, 20 year olds. Like, you're thinking Gabe Smith is your third line center for the Moncton Wildcats. That's pretty damn good. That's impressive, right? And whatever mixture that Gardner decides at one point, they had Gabe in the middle. They had Clark, who's a multiple, 2 seasons in a row with 30 plus goals on the wing, and whoever he plugs and plays on the line. And then all of a sudden you go back over to Rimouski and we play them, and you're thinking, okay, if you survive a shift against the Fauchons and the Saint Denis or whatever, then you've got all these different. Male Levine. At one point in our series, Male Levine's playing on the fourth line. He's 19 years old, 6'3", so nobody could match their depth. So they're far and away the two best teams in my opinion. That doesn't always equate into championships or whatever, but it's going to be tough to derail. But I'm very curious to see because there's not a lot of differences. My hope is I hope they both get healthy. I know Rimouski in particular has lived through a ton of injuries. I'd like to see them get as close as they can to 100% health for the finals, if in fact it is Moncton Rimouski, because it would be an epic battle.
If you like Gabe Smith, I know you know this one. You'll like his brother Gavin as well.
Absolutely, yes. We're a big believer in bloodlines in our organization. And I think early in the interview we talked about P.O. Joseph, but Matthew was a terrific player. We were a little bit surprised that P.O. was still there. That happened. Actually, that draft was before me, but we talk a lot in our room about the bloodlines. I think it's an important thing. There's a pedigree. We see it in a lot of different players. So we've certainly been on the wrong side of Gabe Smith. We're hoping to be on the right side of Gavin. And again, we want Gavin to be Gavin. I think the hardest part, and for those of us that have older brothers, the hardest part of don't get compared. Just be who you are. So I think that's a big message, Gav. But I think the nice part is that Gabe has lived through it. So off-season training, Gavin's going to be in shape. You don't have to worry about that because they're both beasts. Gabe's a beast. He's also gone through his experience, so he's going to share the good and the bad of his experience and probably pave the road a little bit easier for Gavin. But yeah, we're pretty excited. It's a great family.
Well, I'd say Jeremy, are you? I'm good. Jeremy, you good?
Yeah, I got a hockey game to watch here,
You
so
got a hockey game to watch. We all got a Jim. Congratulations again on going into the Kingston District Sport Hall of Fame. 10 years with the Islanders. Enjoy Ontario, but man, we can't wait to see you back in Charlottetown, and we cannot wait to see Ice back at the Eastlink Center and back covering hockey.
Thanks, buddy. I really appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun. It's always fun to talk hockey, and anytime, guys.
Awesome.
thanks, Jim.
Thanks, Jim.
Thanks, guys.
Yep. So again, we're talking about Eastlink services and talking about how if you get a nice little TV package as a bundle with your internet or wireless, you're going to be able to get the Prime Sports channels for free. That's the Sportsnets, that's the TSNs. Golf Channel is in there as well. But of course, you get those Sportsnets because you're going to get a chance to watch those Blue Jays now. They're back in action, wrapping up the playoffs. But hey, you don't want to miss a second of the action. Make sure you get it with Eastlink. 1-888-345-1111. Eastlink.ca. Visit the store for more details. That's right, the Prime Sports channels included with your TV in a bundle. Make sure you check that out. You don't want to miss any baseball. And again, you didn't expect the Wayne and Schuster reference before. If I'm talking baseball and I'm talking Wayne and Schuster, you got to finish off with the line. No more will Stratford see him play ball. I'm trading the bum to Montreal. Again, the Shakespearean baseball game, Wayne and Schuster. Make sure you check that out as well. Jeremy, what a pleasure it was to have Jim Hulton on. I know we're spoiled with Eastlink. We get to talk to Jim quite a bit. But to sit down and talk about the early part of his career and talk about getting a chance to actually, chat about the pro opportunities and coaching in that World Junior team that many people point to as the best of all time.
You'll be hard pressed to find it. I find a better team than that. If you could somehow get your Gavin McKenna and Maddox Schultz and all these young guys that are coming up in the in the younger ranks right now, all on a team, you might be able to compete with it. But no, I don't think you'll ever see a World Junior Team Canada better than the lockout year. They were unstoppable.
Yeah, Jim, an assistant with that, and it's getting that time of the hour. Jeremy, you've got hockey to watch. You've got your
Yeah,
Moncton Wildcats, Rouen Noranda Huskies game number 3. By the time you're hearing or watching this, that game will be over as well. But we'll be keeping an eye on all things hockey and getting ourselves set for the finals of the Quebec Maritime Junior Hockey League. Thanks again for watching. Thanks again for listening. And Jeremy, see you at the rink. Maybe next episode be
hey,
be at the Avenir Center.
I mean, we could make it work. We could
Maybe
very
at
well
the
make it
Avenir
work. Yeah,
Center. Oh my goodness, the Magical
fingers
Mystery
crossed.
Tour. Fingers
Fingers crossed.
crossed. We'll head up to we'll go to the Big Ear and have a listen. Does anyone call it the Big Ear?
No, but I can. Now that you mention it, I can see the buy-in on that one.
The Big Ear. We're going to the Big Ear in Moncton. All right. My friend, enjoy the games. Everyone, enjoy the games. And thanks again for Around the Maritimes here on the Quebec Maritime Junior Hockey League podcast.